Detectives are really cool. The idea of going into a crime scene with your stylish coat, analyzing said crime and finding clues to use in court. Okay, saying that out loud, that does actually sound kind of boring, I'm gonna be honest. But that's just real life, isn't it? It's boring. And what do we do when we're bored of reality? We play games, and there are a multitude of games out there where you play as a detective. But it's very, very rare to find a good one. A lot of them just boil down to looking for clues and then sitting in a courtroom trying to prove someone's ass is innocent or guilty. And yes, I am very aware that Ace Attorney is on the screen right now, and I understand it has an audience of people that adore it, but I don't know, man. That part of detective work is just boring as fuck to me. I like the ones that take a deep dive into the dangers of being a detective, by specifically making you play as ones in completely unrealistic scenarios, taking advantage of the fact that it's a game, so you know. It's fun, and I want to talk about some of them and why we need more games like them. In these detective games, a lot of the crimes you investigate are, well, pretty horrific, because, you know, they're crimes. But what if a detective game went down the horror route and fully embraced that? Okay, in the script it says, this is where I mentioned the evil within because Sebastian is a detective. The game has nothing to do with detective work though. I mean, of course I had to tick it off something from the list of shit I never shut the fuck up about in my videos. Instead of the evil within though, I'm going to be talking about the game Condemned Criminal Origins. And in that game, it starts out pretty simple, you know, you're just trying to solve a crime relating to a serial killer. But it slowly devolves into insanity. In Condemned, you play as Ethan Thomas, an FBI detective, so you know you're dealing with some real shit if you're playing as the detective from the FBI. You're sent out to investigate murders caused by a serial killer, which of course sends you into some really ominous, creepy areas where light sources and power just don't seem to exist. And of course in areas like this, there's going to be an awful lot of dangers lurking around every corner. So here's the catch with Condemned. The guy you're playing as, Ethan Thomas, well, he's not afraid to cave in some skulls to get the job done. When you aren't investigating crimes, you'll be tussling with all kinds of crackheads, using anything you can find in the area. And I literally mean anything. If you can swing it, Ethan will use it. The melee combat is a lot of fun, like goddamn, this shit was ahead of its time. Of course, during Condemned, the plot constantly thickens as you solve more and more of the horrifying murders taking place, taking you to all kinds of horrifying areas, and some of those areas will truly scar you for life. If you played the game, you'll know what I mean when I say fuck the shopping mall. Condemned does kinda shit itself near the end, but it's still a solid game overall, and an awesome detective game. If you want to know what I think about the sequel though, well, I haven't played it, so I can't really make a judgment on it. You get it? Because the next game I'm going to be talking about is called Judgment. Did you get it? Okay, I'm going to talk about the game now. Imagine a Yakuza game, but instead of being a part of the crimes and conspiracies going on, you're instead trying to solve them. Which is exactly what Judgment is. You just can't go wrong with that idea. Well, they do a bit in some sections, but we'll talk about that in a bit. In Judgment, you play as an ex-lawyer called Yagami. He quit the force because of a case where he let a supposed murderer go free. And on his release, that murderer proceeded to kill his girlfriend in cold blood. Yagami felt so much guilt from this to the point where he quit, feeling fully responsible for it. But then he makes his own agency called the Yagami Detective Agency, because despite what happened to him, he is still motivated to find out the truth. Not just with general crimes, but with the case that made him quit, as it still doesn't sit right with him what happened. Now, I'm not going to spoil any of the story for this game, because it's one of the best in the entire RGG Studios library. And that's saying a lot, because Yakuza games have excellent stories, except for the fourth game. The more I think about that game, the more I sink into a deep depression. Come to think of it, there was a detective in Yakuza 4 too. Wait a second. As you'd expect, Judgment plays like a Yakuza game. You'll be getting harassed left and right on the street by random ass thugs, and hell, even the Yakuza themselves want to kill Yagami half the time, mainly because an ex-Yakuza works for his agency and they don't like him all too much. Yagami thankfully knows how to handle these situations, even to the point where it makes me question if he should be the one being arrested. Judgment is awesome, but there's a huge issue. It's a detective game where the oh my god, I fucking cheated. where the detective mechanics are probably the worst part of the experience. When you get to a crime scene, you go into this first-person perspective where you have to analyze the environment for clues, and you get absolutely no help of what you're looking for here. I mean, you are told what to look for, but it's usually some small stupid shit that you will only notice if you're watching a guide on this. And let me tell you, there are guides on the internet for all of these investigation sections, and all of the comments are just talking about how shit they are. Then there's the goddamn trailing sections, and if you've played any game, you know that trailing sections are god awful. Like, they're some of the biggest pace-breaking pieces of shit sections. I'm not even exaggerating here. And the trailing sections in Judgment, oh man, they are easily some of the worst I've ever experienced. They're so slow and boring. All it boils down to is moving your analog stick slightly forwards, unless the AI on the person you're trailing breaks and spots you and makes you have to restart the entire section. They suck. And I don't enjoy these two detective-esque mechanics at all. However, I do like them in the sequel. Lost Judgment expands on all of the detective mechanics, and they know they've done it better, literally throwing you straight into a trailing mission when you start the game. A trailing mission that feels more refined with the AI, and one where you can disguise yourself in the middle of the street when the person you're following turns around. Like, sure, it's got a health bar to it, but it is a godsend. You don't need to awkwardly find a specific hiding spot anymore. You can just do what any person would do in this situation. Speaking of expanding on the mechanics though, Lost Judgment adds parkour. Now, it's not as open and free as the parkour in, say, Dying Light 2, but it's still a welcome addition, and it allows Yagami to sneak into buildings where in the first game, all he'd usually do is just walk in the front door like a jackass. Yagami is such a dedicated detective in both of these games. The guy is literally willing to sneak into a school and beat the shit out of teenagers just to learn the truth of a case. Sorry, did I say beating the shit out of them? I just meant punishing the rowdy students. You can even skateboard in the open world. Yagami is probably the coolest middle-aged man I've ever seen. Anyway, just want to let you all know now before I wrap up the video that I won't be talking about Judgment and Lost Judgment in my backlog videos, because I mean, I've literally just talked about them. Yes, this is a shameless plug for my backlog series. You should definitely check them out after this. Well now, I'm gonna do some detective work of my own, and I'm gonna look into the industry and find out why they haven't made more detective games like these two. They're both standout titles, and I'd love to see more iterations on the whole detective mystery genre. Ones that aren't just visual novels. If you know any detective games that I didn't mention and I should check out, let me know down in the comments. In the meantime, make sure you've liked the video and subscribed, because I will find out if you haven't. I have insane detective skills, never forget that. Oh shit, yeah, I probably should have mentioned the Arkham series in this video, shouldn't I?